Gender ideology claims identity can override biology. In this video, I'm ranking every argument used to defend that claim on a tier list, from the ones that deserve debate to the ones that collapse on contact with reality. The tiers will be coherent, flawed, weak, and manipulative. Trans women are women. This is the most famous claim, operating more so as a slogan than an actual argument. To debunk it is easy. Simply ask what a woman is, and the answer becomes circular. A woman is someone who identifies as a woman. That definition explains nothing. A philosopher would call this a tautology, but activists insist it's progress. Weak tier. But this is just a slogan. What about the actual metaphysics behind it? Gender identity is primary, biology is secondary. Gender ideology's core claim is that internal identity is more real than biological sex, which is just an absurdity. Identity requires identification with something, an objective standard. Otherwise, your identity is meaningless. So you run into the same issue as the trans women are women argument, tautology. Since when did these supposed rational progressives decide that empiricism should be tossed away in favor of making subjective feelings authoritative? This isn't science, it's metaphysics enforced by policy. The only way you could ever argue this is if you hold a spiritual theology with gendered souls. Is gender ideology supposed to be an ideology or a religion? I suppose it would explain a lot if they admit it's the latter. Manipulative tier. Gender is a social construct. This one's a trick. It's true that culture imposes its own values upon the sexes, but how much of that culture's values are arbitrary, and how much of it is made to reflect biology? Culture emerges from biology, it doesn't float above it. And biologically, we do see serious differences between men and women. Different instincts, preferences, ways of seeing the world, different responses to stimuli. Science calls this neurobiology, but ideologues call this neurosexism. Calling sexual dimorphism neurosexism is like calling gravity physicsism. They use the fact that culture's values don't always perfectly mirror biology to then make the claim that culture and biology are completely independent, which is obviously false. Manipulative tier. Female brain, male body, or vice versa. This claim is that there are some individuals who have biological brains of the opposite sex as the rest of their body. But the issue is, studies show overlaps in some rare cases, but never full inversions. No one has found a literal sex-swap brain. At best, a male brain with more feminine traits than average, but still undeniably male, and not a guarantee of transgenderism. It's also funny that to make this argument, gender ideologues suddenly decide neurobiology is real. Exposing your hypocrisy for such a weak argument is a questionable tactic. Intersex conditions prove gender is a spectrum. Intersex conditions are real, but rare, and most intersex people can clearly fit in as male or female. Edge cases don't dissolve categories. People with 6 fingers don't make finger count a spectrum identity. Exceptions don't redefine the rule, they prove the rule exists. This argument also hilariously contradicts gender theory. If biology determines a spectrum, then identity follows biology, meaning only intersex people would be non-binary by definition. But most people who identify as trans have no intersex conditions. This argument tries to smuggle biological variation into a justification for identity-based gender. It doesn't work. Weak tier. Children know their gender. This argument assumes that children indisputably know their gender identity, and therefore you can go ahead with gender-affirming care, even surgery. The issue is that it's simply untrue. Most gender non-conforming kids grow up to identify with their biological sex. If you had put them through surgery, their lives would have now been ruined. And that's assuming gender affirmation is even the correct course of treatment. Temporary confusion should not justify permanent medicalization. Weak tier. Do you want a living daughter or a dead son? This is emotional blackmail. It frames disagreement as lethal cruelty. Even though the statistics repeatedly show outcomes remain grim regardless of intervention. Fear is being used as a policy tool aimed at desperate parents. Bottom of the manipulative tier. Self-ID harms no one. This argument assumes identity has no external consequences, so just be kind. The issue is that it's simply false. Try telling the female athlete that just lost the most important race of her life to a biological male that she should just be more respectful. Try telling a woman that she should be okay with a biological male sharing her bathroom. This argument appeals to empathy, trying to guilt you into agreement, but requires you to abandon empathy for those negatively affected. Manipulative tier. Gender dysphoria is real. The argument makes the claim that gender dysphoria is a real phenomenon that does cause immense suffering. And they're right, gender dysphoria is a well-documented psychological condition. The issue here is the mode of treatment. One side says, get under a surgeon's scalpel. The result is irreversible bodily damage. These gender-affirming surgeries don't actually make your body switch sex at all. They just carve you up to try to make you resemble your desired sex, while removing the features of your actual sex. The other side says that since this is a psychological condition, it should be treated psychologically. Your actual biology is completely fine. Given the statistics that show that those who perform gender-affirming surgery aren't actually satisfied with the result, we can be pretty certain this is not a valid mode of treatment. On the other hand, psychological treatment, especially with the youth, seems decently effective, and has the added bonus of not requiring permanent damage. Flawed tier, as it does at least have a valid premise. Adult autonomy. This argument is the softest version of gender ideology, and simply says, if an adult wants to transition, he'll do it, and you can't stop him. And it's true. If someone really wants to go through with this, he will. But also, if someone wants to reject or exclude people who do this, they also will. And you can't stop them either without force. Ideally, each can go and find their own like-minded communities. They'll both be happier that way. Freedom includes the freedom to disagree, and the freedom to separate. But there is one fact I'd like to mention. It's perfectly normal to be dissatisfied with your lot in life. Many of us wish we were smarter, more attractive, etc. And this includes sex preference. Often, you may find yourself in situations where if you were the opposite sex, life would be better. Maybe you would be happier, and not just in a grass is always greener situation. But you don't have that option. You can only ever choose between being what you are or throwing away what you have. Transitioning will only remove the advantages of your current sex. It will never provide you with the life of someone of the opposite sex. This argument is coherent. It's true, I can't stop you if you want to transition, but in the future, you might wish I could have. Gender ideology is part of a broader modern trend, treating subjective identity as more real than objective reality. My truth, my feelings make reality, and everyone has to validate it or be labeled a bigot. When subjective feelings replace objective truth, you end up identifying as God, but lacking his power, because reality, as always, does not conform to your whims. This concludes the tier list. If there are any other arguments you would like to see ranked, please share them in the comments below.